Hey everyone! So this last weekend I drove 8 hours out to Minnesota to attend the Rochester Chess Festival, and it was a really great event, especially for me. More on that later. But part of this event was the chance to play in a tandem simul against two international masters, John Bartholomew and Sean Nagle. If you don't know, a simultaneous exhibition is an event where one strong player, or sometimes like here, multiple strong players, play against a whole bunch of other players at the same time. So here, John and Sean started on opposite sides of this big circle of almost 40 players, and then they went around from board to board, making one move at a time. This is obviously a bit of an extra challenge for the masters because on top of keeping dozens of different games in their head at the same time, you can imagine how they might have different plans in those games, but they're not talking to each other. They just kind of have to figure it out and see the vision. So my game started as an English and got turned into kind of a Queen's Gambit declined semi-Slav sort of thing. It's kind of a slow and strategic way to get into the middle game, but things can open up fast. From pretty early on, my plan was to push my pawn to e5, which is usually how I like to free my light-squared bishop. That piece can be a problem in openings like the Queen's Gambit declined or the semi-Slav or like the French, where you don't develop it outside the pawn chain. And I really should know that getting that bishop out is a high priority, but instead I was playing a little defensively, a little passively, even though my long-term plan was to better activate my pieces. H6 here was mainly just a waiting move because I kind of wanted John and Sean to give me a hint of what I should be doing, like something to react to. Like I wanted to know what part of the board they would be targeting. It wasn't really the right way to think, but still I was really building up to that e5 push. Their bishop b2 discouraged that. I played queen e7 for a few reasons. I had ideas of trading off the dark squared bishop, which felt very strong. And I also wanted to tempt them to play c5, which would make my e5 even more enticing once I saved my bishop. If the pawn tension between the d and c pawns stayed for much longer, I was afraid I was going to end up with an isolated queen's pawn or even just like losing that pawn. But before I had a chance to break in the center, Sean did. I had to take, or they could push that pawn forward and fork my minor pieces. So we made our trades. And now here, finally, the top engine move is e5, but I played c5. I don't really know what I was thinking, to be honest. This is a total blank spot in my memory. I don't know if I was worried about d5 or what. Like, did I just forget how to count? Like, I worked up to it for so long, and I really wish I remembered what I was afraid of. But okay, c5. It's not that bad either. It's fine. The rook comes in, I attack the queen. This becomes a bit of a theme in this game, chasing that queen around. And then I take on d4. Queen takes back, and now, okay, obviously I'm not going to move my knight and blunder mate in one, but this battery threat with the queen and the bishop is actually quite annoying. I attempted to get rid of one of the parts of the battery, going back to that plan of trading bishops, but John simply dropped the bishop out of reach, and now it's really annoying. I played b6, finally ready to get my light-scored bishop into the game, but then I got hit with knight e5. And already the tactics are starting. I didn't want to go bishop b7 because after knight g4, remember, I can't move that knight or I still get mated. And any other move I make, he is going to try and take my knight with check, and then I'm probably just losing a pawn on f6. By the way, turns out e5 is also a good move here. Briefly considered it, didn't like it, couldn't see the tactics all the way through, and didn't want to send my pawn out into battle without his friends, so I didn't play it. So I start kicking the queen. Bishop c5. Queen backs up. I attack it again. I'm like, maybe we repeat moves? Nope. Queen goes to g3, still threatening mate if my knight moves, and now threatening to win my knight if the queen ever moves because the bishop's attacking it and my g-pawn is pinned. So now we start getting a little crazy. Knight e4. Already I'm not doing great according to the engine, even though material is still equal. It's honestly really interesting to watch how the IMs are able to just slowly improve their position, and my moves just look so erratic by comparison. Like these one move threats, what are we doing? They do have to be careful where they put the queen though. My plan wasn't just total ooga booga attack the queen. Like I wanted to chase it into a more passive position or a position right for tactics like on e3. I do still have a dark squared bishop, remember. So here I passed my turn. We were allowed 2 passes if we needed more time to think, and really tried to do some brute force calculation. None of it worked. I really just wanted to sack my knight on f2 and then pin the queen to the king with bishop c5, but he could always just block with his own dark squared bishop, so it never worked. If I moved the knight to c5, then knight c6, forking my queen and bishop, and I can only save 1. If I brought the knight back to f6, then knight c6 again. I move my queen, he takes my bishop on b4, and then my knight on f6, and then bishop f3 attacking my rook, and if rook b8, then bishop c6 attacking my other rook, and if rook f8, queen g3 wins my b8 rook. But if you can visualize that far, see if you can figure out why queen g3 isn't even the best move in that position. It's actually much stronger for white to just take the h-pawn, allowing my bishop to finally develop, but basically forcing a checkmate. Anyway, what I really wanted was to go bishop b7, but then rook d6 was a threat, defended by white's knight, forking my queen and bishop. I'd wasted so much time moving my dark squared bishop around that now I was really wishing I'd just taken a move or two to already have my light squared bishop in the game. So instead I played f5, defending my knight, keeping it in an attacking position as long as I possibly could, also opening up for 7th rank defense against checkmates on g7, and then still hoping to get my bishops involved and maybe even bring my queen over to attack white's castled king. Then knight c6, as expected, I move, takes, and now all my tactics on the dark squares have evaporated. And then bishop h5. I was not prepared for this move. This was about where I figured things were a lot worse than I realized. I went rook e7, thinking that f3 was coming, and I wanted that rook to stay defending my terrible e-pawn once the knight moved. Really regretting not playing e5 when I had the chance, by the way. This is actually a forced mate, which John saw and pointed out after the game, starting with rook d8 check, and I just kind of get surrounded over there. But Sean had another plan and he played bishop g6. Still extremely annoying, mind you. My king is getting suffocated back there. I decided to finally get my light scored bishop out and do a little reroute to e8 to trade it off. If I could accomplish that, I figured I'd at least survive into the endgame. But now the IMs are the ones throwing punches, and theirs are hitting a lot harder. f3. Things were moving faster in the simul now, so I wasn't getting 10 or 20 minutes to think anymore. I had to move my knight somewhere, and I didn't really have time to think before just moving it back to f6. I almost immediately saw that they could just take on f6 and then win my h-pawn, right? Sean unleashed something even worse. A rook sacrifice on d7. You can see me go through the 5 stages of grief as I finally see the idea. If I take on d7, it's no longer defending that e6 square. Queen takes with check, winning my rook back, and I lose the exchange after king g7, queen takes d7, and king takes g6. And look, I was really tired at this point after 2 days of traveling and running on literally like 2 hours of sleep. These are just my excuses for the next move I played, which was just king g7 right away. For some reason, I forgot that they needed a tempo to actually like take my rook, after which I could take the bishop. I was just imagining my rook was already gone, and I thought I was getting checkmated on the 7th rank if I didn't do this. So, okay, you know what they say, one blunder leads to another. John came back and obviously found the correct move after all the confusion, and my last little hope was like, maybe the bishop could kind of get stuck on h5, but of course, Sean immediately just took the pawn. My e-pawn is pinned. I can't take the bishop or I lose the queen. It was 11 p.m. and I had 2 days of classical chess ahead of me, so instead of making the IMs waste time converting a piece up endgame, I just resigned. John kindly chatted with me a bit after the game, and he told me that my earlier plan of bishop h6 was probably just totally wrong. And looking back, I can see that I really just needed to hurry up and get my other pieces into the game instead. I obviously wasn't playing my best, but honestly, in the moment against stronger players like this, you start seeing a lot of ghosts, and at least I tend to go for much slower plans. But of course, this was still a fun event. It was such a great casual vibe, and it was awesome to meet John in real life. I've been watching videos of his for a long time. And if you made it this far, I'll let you know that this was the only game I lost this weekend. I ended up tying for first in the under 1900 section of the Rochester Open, and I'm hoping to get a video out on that soon, so if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it, and I'll see you soon!